Today, we are in election season, and that has been the hot topic for so many conversations. So I thought I would add my voice to this topic. I'm going to look at election season from a financial transitionist standpoint, which might be just a little bit different, but hopefully will add some sanity to your day and to your fall. So in election season, this can mean big changes for us, personal, political, nationally as a country, and we don't really like change very much as humans. We have some difficulty, even if it's a positive change, in dealing with changes. And it struck me that that is exactly what a financial transitionist is trained to deal with and to help clients get through, is working through change. So I'm going to talk today about dealing with change in the season of elections and hopefully have a few tips for how you can maintain your sanity and come out of this better. First, I want to normalize the process and what's going on here. So we're going to look at the 4 stages of transition. Most people go through change actually in a process, not exactly black and white, like 1, 2, 3, 4, but we tend to go through stages when we're dealing with big changes in our lives. And guess what? The market does as well when we're dealing with the change of elections. We start in anticipation, go through ending, through passage, and end up at a new normal at some point. One of the most important things to notice here, by the way that this is presented, is that some stages are longer than others, and that the whole process takes a good amount of time. We kind of tend to think that change should be a light switch, just off and on. One day I'm here and the next I'm in a new normal. That's not reality. It's not really what happens, and it's not the way that we operate best as humans. So if we have a little patience with ourselves and understand that there are many steps to this process, it can be quite helpful in getting through them. First, right now, let's talk about the first stage. We are in anticipation stage. And that would be now through the announcement of the next president of the United States, right? It's a few months here. It's generally a short-ish stage, depending on what kind of change we're talking about. But this is the time, if you think of this squirrel here gathering nuts for winter, this is the time that we are getting ready. The event has not happened yet, but we're thinking about how it may happen, how our lives may change, how we might feel about that, how we're going to integrate any changes into our lives. You might have worry, you might have elation, you might have despair. This can be a time of a lot of emotions. So one of the things to be aware of is that we don't know what the outcome is going to be yet. So perhaps try to keep that in perspective and don't borrow troubles before they happen. I see that happening a lot with any kind of anticipation. Yes, being ready for an outcome is a good idea, but you don't need to set up things just yet because the outcome might be really different than what you think it might be. So a tip here is to be aware of any unreasonable commitments or expectations for the outcome. Don't necessarily commit to anything just yet. Realize that even when there is a big political change in the makeup of this country, it takes several months to integrate. And often the details aren't exactly what was projected. Campaign promises can change a lot when an administration actually gets to work. So try to avoid an all or nothing mindset. Instead, the opportunity here is awareness, tuning into the stories that are playing in your head, examining your expectations, that they may not actually be what happens. What are you expecting to happen? And examining that it is true or not. The stories that we tell ourselves inform our choices and contribute to the creation of our lives. So if you want more control over your life, examine those stories, get a little bit of objectivity to them, and build resilience regardless of what the outcome is. Now, very soon we will be in ending stage. And that's the event happens. Ta-da! Something has come to an end. In this case, it'd be the term of a president, other elected officials. And regardless of whether the outcome is viewed as positive or negative, change can be very difficult. So the ending stage is about change management. The pitfalls that could happen here, you might expect, could be overwhelm and confusion. This might lead to fight, flight, or freeze reactions. So how do you deal with this gracefully? Well, remember, this is normal and part of the process and temporary. The ending stage is one of the shorter stages. A lot of changes happen. It feels very intense, but it's actually relatively short. This is a time to organize and prioritize, assessing your needs and where you are and what has changed. We actually have tools that we help clients when they have a financial transition like that. For this type of change with elections, you might, again, go back to those stories, go back to where am I actually at now rather than letting your imagination run wild. Financially, you might go back to your balance sheet. Assess objectively, where are you now financially? Are you financially safe or what needs to be done? Remember, outcomes are not inevitable unless you cruise through an event on autopilot like you always have. So take the time to stop and listen to that inner script and evaluate rather than just believing that everything that's going on in your head is just true. Assess whether you're playing out old patterns that are not helpful anymore. And if you are, you can make a conscious decision to choose a different script, to rewrite your script, and maybe manage your change differently going forward. So this ending stage will be from the winner announcement to when the new president is sworn in January. And then the real work begins. Then we enter passage. Now, passage is the longest stage in transitions, the biggest one. And it's usually with the most turmoil because people don't expect passage. They think ending happens and then new normal. Maybe there's a little bit of uncomfortable time, but most people do not expect passage to take the amount of time that it does. In passage, we experience possibilities and excitement, or we also experience chaos and fear. So this is a time of relating to the change that has happened. There's no going back. Now we're in it. We are adapting to the change. So in terms of election cycles, this would be from the time that the new president is sworn in, and it's usually the first 1 to 2 years. This is the time when the market assesses what changes are going to actually happen, what impacts they might have. It's usually not a strong time in the stock market, by the way. Ryan's probably talked about this with seasonality. The first 1 to 2 years in an election cycle tend to be down or even just sideways, but not euphoric. Because again, we don't like change. The market doesn't like change. So we kind of step carefully in this passage stage. So this is the time of real work and change, both as a country and as individuals. Could be time when you change your mind a lot. People think maybe I'm crazy. What am I doing? But that's very common in passage. It's a time to explore possibilities and put the new pieces together. Susan Bradley, financial transitionist, reminds us that during passage, leave yourself room to back up and turn around, trying to maintain a healthy, positive outlook. But if we feel the situation is stressing us out, we can compromise our own cognitive and emotional faculties. So don't make decisions in haste here. Remember, you might need a timeout sometime, and be sure that you are taking care of yourself in a healthy way. Support groups are really great here, by the way, whether we're talking about financial and emotional change or political change. Don't isolate yourself, but continue to engage. Have social support. Have some friends, some people that you can talk to as you go through this big stage of passage. And then finally, we do end up at a new normal eventually, which is like it sounds. The beginning of life once the transition has been successfully integrated. So in terms of election cycles, this is usually somewhere around year 2, certainly by year 3. The market has absorbed the changes and feels steady enough to move on. We've got some clear direction here. The smoke is kind of cleared. Usually in years 3 and 4 of a presidency in the United States, these are the stronger economic years from a stock market standpoint, because both people and markets can now speak of the event, the election, in the past tense. They're able to look back on it and see, oh, this is how things are coming together. So there's a renewed sense of energy and confidence. There are no real pitfalls to speak of in this stage. It feels a little bit like completion, but it's always good to maintain focus and clarity on your why, finding the best fit for yourself and building that new future in a new atmosphere. So continuing with long-term and short-term financial planning is what happens in this new normal. But remember, let yourself time to get there. So as a recap, we tend to fall through these 4 stages of transition. Some take longer than others, but the whole process should be seen with great awareness and space for yourself to move through these different changes. Space also for others who are also going to be moving through these changes, and for us as a country. Interestingly, Susan Bradley also laid this transition stages slide over the pandemic and talked about how we dealt with COVID and moved through passage into new normal. This can be applied in all kinds of ways. I find it very, very helpful to normalize any type of change process, help you with that change management, and get through what might be a little chaotic time with a little bit more grace and understanding. So hopefully you come out on the other side of all of this, more confidence and feeling just better about the whole entire situation and how you are able to deal with it.